And so round two, for the most part, goes to the Allies. Lots of great victories for the Allies after 1942. Let's see, let's start off with the Battle of Midway, because that's what I have on the screen. In the Pacific, most American forces fighting were Marines and the Navy, U.S. Marines and U.S. Navy. In early 1942, Allied forces were able to push Japanese forces to the island of Midway. The Battle of Midway at first was not going well at all for Allied forces, but soon American aircraft carriers sunk all 4 of the Japanese carriers and many planes. The Japanese were never able to regain the advantage after the Battle of Midway. The Americans began an island-hopping campaign, making their way to Japan. The worst battles in the Pacific were fought in Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Just as a side note, my great-uncle Gene Tapia fought in almost every Pacific battle. He was part of the first assault on Iwo Jima and survived, was able to make it home at the end of the war, and lived into like his 80s. So there were people who survived and people who were able to tell the tales, as it were, of this intriguing conflict. I don't know why it captures us so. But there's something about World War II for America that just makes it, the closer that we get to all World War II vets and those who lived through World War II dying, I think it sort of brings about more nostalgia and more intrigue and more interest. So I'm sorry we can't go through everything, but anyway. Okay, moving on. June 6th, 1944, Allied powers landed on the beaches of Normandy, France, and this is known as D-Day. So, question I often get, what does the D in D-Day actually stand for? Guess what? It doesn't stand for anything. It's a means by which military commanders did not have to change dates in their battle plans. So, hey, on D-Day, right? On D-Day, whichever day we are able to say go, that's the day we're going to go. But if we say, oh, it's going to be on June 4th, and then we have to change it later on, so we just say D-Day, right? So during the assault on Normandy, Allied forces used amphibious assault vehicles that were either designed by or very similar in design to a craft designed by Andrew Higgins. Now, Higgins designed these boats for use in Louisiana swamps and marshes, and they were tested in Lake Pontchartrain in New Orleans before going to the Navy and the Marines. Dwight Eisenhower once stated that Andrew Higgins was the man who won the war for the Allies. So that's kind of a fun thing for our state. The Allies suffered huge losses at D-Day, but they were able to penetrate France. Before the end of the year, most of the Germans were pushed out of France. The Battle of the Bulge, December 16th, 1944 to January 5th, 1945, was a major German offensive campaign launched through the forested Ardennes version of Wallonia in Belgium, France, and Luxembourg on the Western Front toward the end of World War II. The offensive was planned with the primary goal to recapture the important harbor of Antwerp. It was a surprise attack, which caught the Allied forces completely off guard. U.S. forces bore the brunt of the attack and incurred their highest casualties for any operation during the war. The battle also severely depleted Germany's armored forces on the Western Front, which Germany was largely unable to replace. German personnel and Luftwaffe aircraft also sustained heavy losses. The Germans' initial attack included 200,000 men, 340 tanks, and 280 other tracked vehicles. Between 67,000 and 100,000 of their men were killed, missing, or wounded. For the Americans, over 600,000 men were involved in the battle, of whom 89,000 were casualties, including up to 19,000 killed. It was the largest and bloodiest battle fought by the U.S. in World War II. The Allies soon started bombing German cities. In early 1945, American and British forces made it into Germany. Hitler refused to evacuate the citizens, though. In April, the Allied forces were just outside Berlin, and Germany surrendered on May 8th. Hitler, his wife, and other top Nazis committed suicide before being captured by the Allies. In Italy, Mussolini and his mistress had already been shot and killed. In February 1945, the U.S. began bombing Japanese islands. Hundreds of thousands of people died. In May 1945, more troops arrived from Europe to help in the Pacific. On August 6, 1945, a U.S. plane dropped the first atomic bomb. The target was Hiroshima, and the second atomic bomb, dropped on Nagasaki, occurred 3 days later. Those that lived there and didn't die from the bomb's drop, for the most part, died from radiation later on. Not every Japanese politician wanted to keep fighting, and not every American wanted to drop the bombs. The decision was made, however, and Japan surrendered on August 15, 1945. The question remains, however, was the U.S. justified in dropping the bombs? Because with these bombs, with their detonation, we entered into an age where we suddenly have the capability of annihilating everyone on Earth. So it's understandable and reasonable to think that upon the war's end, we definitely go into a period of time where there's a great deal of fear and anxiety about the future. Nobody has seen a weapon of mass destruction like this before. So where in World War I we have the first use of industrialized and mechanized warfare, now we have the atomic age. So we're going to end here, and we will pick up next time with the Cold War.